Let's cultivate our motivation. And when we think about the kindness of others towards us, both when they've both when they've been our parents and when they haven't, then automatically a feeling of endearment comes, a heartwarming feeling that sentient beings are that they're worthwhile and they're good, and there's a feeling of affection towards them. So that feeling arises quite naturally when we think of their kindness. And then from there, that's called heartwarming love. From there, we generate the love that wishes sentient beings to have happiness in its causes, and the compassion that wishes them to be free of suffering in his causes. And that love and compassion don't come in any particular order. Depends if we, think of their lack of happiness first, or we think of their having suffering first. But we want to develop both, and so that we feel really connected with sentient beings, not just because we share a lot in common, but because we really care about them. And there's a feeling of endearment, a feeling of respect and warmth towards sentient beings. So it's not some kind of hard and dry feeling of love and compassion. Yes, I want them to be happy. No, I don't want them to suffer. But it's, something that really kind of takes over our mind with a very strong wish and a very strong wanting to enact that and bring that about. So that kind of love and compassion not only transform our inner makeup, our inner emotional landscape, but also affect how we relate to other living beings, and also affect if we're going to be able to generate bodhicitta or not. Because without love and compassion for others, bodhicitta it's not going to happen. And without bodhicitta, then there's no way to become fully awakened. So you can see that it all kind of starts with sentient beings and feeling their kindness, seeing them as endearing. And then one step follows the other to generate bodhicitta, and then bodhicitta. With bodhicitta, we follow the 6 perfections. We create the cause for full awakening, and then that leads us to the fulfillment of our own and others' purposes in full awakening. So let's generate that thought right now. So last session, we finished chapter 8, which was the different ways to systematize the path and to practice the path. And now we're starting another chapter called Tools for the Path. And this chapter has a lot of different points in it. It comes from when I was preparing to, and to write this series of books, and gathering ideas from different people who had been practicing for, periods of time, and asking them, what do you still not understand, or what would have been helpful to you to understand at the beginning of your practice. Then many different points came up, and so those are included in here. So some of the points, His Holiness speaks about a lot. Other ones I had to question him about. But the whole idea, tools for the path, kind of what do you need to know about practicing the Dharma in general and constructing a practice that's going to be useful to you. What do you need to know that isn't taught explicitly in the standard Lanram, or stuff that's picked up by the way or taught in other contexts, but that it would be really helpful to understand before you started. I'll tell you the kind of topics that are in this path, and see if there are things that would, because this volume is the intro volume, see if there are things that would help you on the path. General advice, okay. Wisdom and faith, what's the difference between them? When do you have either proper practice, purification and collection of merit? How often when you're a beginner do you hear those terms, but nobody sits down and explains them to you? Prayers and rituals, what are their purpose? How do you relate to them? Study, reflection, and meditation, we always hear that, but do we really understand what it's about? Memorization and debate, we see lots of that if you were in India, but how does it relate to us? And role models. Yeah. I've never heard the expression role models used in a Dharma text. But role models are really important, aren't they? Okay, so tools for the path. To practice the Dharma successfully, more than information and a meditation cushion are required. Okay, we need a proper motivation and good practical advice that will help to overcome hindrances. This chapter speaks of the mental tools we will need to progress along the path, such as wisdom and faith and wisdom. We'll also explore the role of prayers and rituals, of purification and the collection of merit, and of memorization and debate in cultivating the three wisdoms, the wisdoms arising from learning, reflecting on the teachings, and meditating on them. Okay, so the first is general advice. Okay. Now the first thing that is talked about here, I think everybody needs to know, but nobody knows, okay, when you're starting. Learning the Dharma is different from learning subjects in school. Yeah, we don't have any other model for how to learn material than the model from our secular education. And what's the model from secular education? You memorize what the teacher taught, you repeat it back on a text, you get a good grade, and then you basically forget it. Maybe a little bit of it sticks. Okay? And your grade is dependent on how well you memorized it and told the teacher what they already know. But that's not the kind of learning we're going to do in Buddhism. Yeah, we want a totally different kind of learning. But, we come in with our feelings, if you like school when you were younger, if you didn't like school when you're younger, and then you come in and what you have is basically a talking mouth. Your whole education is one person sitting in the front of the room talking to you. Yeah. The Tibetans have debate, and that is interactive and gets everybody thinking and contributing. But for Westerners, by and large, unless you speak Tibetan, you don't do that. And, and so, what is it? We just sit there and listen to lectures all day. And then we do some meditation. That may or may not be guided. We guide meditations so people learn how to do them. Many teachers and Dharma centers don't guide the meditations at all. They just say, meditate. And people go, what does that mean? How am I supposed to, they say, meditate on the teachings. How do I meditate on the teachings? I thought I'm supposed to watch my breath. Yeah? So you don't get things kind of explained for you as a newcomer. It's kind of assumed. The education system is assumed like in the Tibetan tradition, you go in, first thing you do as a little kid is you memorize for years, and then you learn debate, and then you get Dharma lectures, and they have it much more interactive, and they live in a monastery where you can learn things just casually, from the people you live with. But for Westerners coming to a Dharma center, that's not the case at all. And so people often come in and, I want to learn to meditate, I want to learn to practice. And that's not described. And, and then we hear about studying and we just think, okay, I just memorize what the teacher said and that's it. Whereas actually Buddhist education is so much more than that. It really involves thinking and analyzing the teachings and trying them out and just testing them to see if they make sense or not. Yeah. But often, in Western education, we aren't necessarily taught to think about things to see if they make sense. We're just taught this is the information. Yeah. Maybe in some subjects, in science you do experiments and things like that. But, learning the Dharma is very, very different than our secular education. But we don't realize that when we start out. Yeah, did any of you, were you surprised by what Buddhist education meant? What you had to do, or did it feel completely natural? Some people are going like this, some people like this, some people. Okay, learning the Dharma is different from learning subjects in school. Not only is our motivation different, from the very get-go, we seek a method to attain fortunate rebirth, liberation, or awakening. You don't go to secular education with that motivation. But also, the methodology is different. Our spiritual mentors present topics that are comparatively easy to understand, as well as those that are more challenging in the same Dharma talk. In secular education, it's the teacher's responsibility to spoon feed the students and give them step by step everything that they can understand. And if a student can't understand it, it's the teacher's fault, and the teacher has to go back and explain it many, many times. Yeah? In Buddhism, it's totally different. You get a Dharma talk, when you listen to His Holiness. He weaves in and out between talking about very simple things and incredibly complex things. And he doesn't expect you to understand the whole thing. Yeah? And if you keep saying, I don't understand that, I don't understand that, he'll say, go think about it. Instead of, explaining it 15 times when the student hasn't even taken the time to think about it first. Okay? So it's a very different system. Okay? Sometimes their response, our spiritual mentor's response to our questions, leads to more confusion. Anybody ever had that happen? Sometimes with the Tibetan teachers, when you're going through a translator, sometimes even conveying your question is difficult because we ask questions that the Tibetans don't ask. And then when you're going through a translator, you have to first get the translator to understand what you're asking. And I remember I had a friend who was a Tibetan who was translating, and he told me that he learned so much more by translating for Ingis, Westerners, about refuge than he had learned just in all the years that he had listened to teachers speak about refuge, because the Westerners were asking all these questions that were never spoken of in the talk that he heard, and the Tibetans never asked because, they were born Buddhist. Okay? So our mentors instruct us to think about the topic and discuss it with others, but we want them to give us just the right answer. Yeah. And to repeat it many times until we understand it. Yeah. Because, in secular education, if a child doesn't do well, the parent goes into the teacher and complains to the teacher. Yeah, everything's on the teacher. Whereas in Buddhism, it's on the student. We have to exert the effort and try and understand. Unlike academic studies in the West, where we are expected to remember and understand everything our teacher says so that we can pass a test, this is not necessarily the case in Dharma education. While we should try to remember and reflect on the salient points of a lecture, we are not expected to understand all the intricacies of a topic at once. But are we okay with not understanding all the intricacies of a topic at once? No. We don't have the ability to say, I'm planting seeds in my mind. This is the part I understand, and I'll think about this and practice this now. I'm planting seeds for the rest, and slowly all develop and grow and understand. No, we don't think like that. Okay? Something comes, we don't understand it, and then either the teacher is a bad teacher or I'm a hopeless student. So right away we get frustrated, we get irritated, we want to either blame the teacher or blame ourselves. Yeah. Whereas, in the Dharma education system, the teachers aren't even thinking that the student would ever react like that. They think that the student just says, oh yeah, I can understand this, and I'm planting seeds for that, and I'll understand it later. But we get into this whole judgment thing. The teacher isn't explaining it well enough. I'm so stupid. Why are they teaching this? They should teach something simpler that I can understand. Yeah? Don't you think? Don't you get into all that kind of stuff? Okay? So you can see how there's going to be sometimes problems because we're bringing our whole framework with us and projecting it onto a totally new situation that doesn't have that framework. Okay. Teachers explain a topic to plant seeds in our mind stream so that we will become familiar with the vocabulary. Having heard the topic once, the next time we hear it, we will be able to focus on the concepts being presented. Okay? That doesn't mean you're going to understand the concepts the second time you hear it, but you're able, you know the words already a little bit if you've reviewed what you learned. Yeah. And then, each time you hear the same teaching, you think about it some more, you get a better understanding. Having heard the topic once, the next time we hear it, we will be able to focus on the concepts being presented. By hearing and reflecting on a teaching repeatedly, our understanding and ability to integrate the meaning into our lives will gradually increase. Okay. How much of our secular education do we try to integrate into our lives? Yeah. I mean, now educators in open classrooms and different things are thinking about, life skills and how to create good students. But in general, education is reading, writing, arithmetic, isn't it? Yeah, with a lot of other topics thrown in. And the purpose is to give you an education so you can get a job. Yeah. Whereas Buddhist education is trying to give you stuff that you can integrate into your life so you can become a happier individual who contributes voluntarily and willingly to the benefit of society. Okay, so it's totally different. Yeah, well, in Buddhist education, I mean, it's funny that they kind of give degrees because, I don't know, whether it's a degree, it's just a piece of paper. But, the real thing is how you integrate it and what kind of person you become. Understanding the Dharma is not dependent on worldly intelligence. This is also very important. Some people who are brilliant in academic studies or worldly affairs have great difficulty understanding Dharma principles. Yeah, I bet if we taught the Dharma to some of the Fortune 500 CEOs, I wonder how much they would understand. Yeah, and we can talk to people who are brilliant in a Western way of talking about brilliance. I mean, I've met some of these people, and they can't understand the Dharma. Yeah, it's so interesting to notice that. There's a real block there. Okay, on the other hand, some people who do not do well in school quickly catch the intent of the Buddha and practice diligently. For this reason, we should not be arrogant because we have worldly intelligence, nor put ourselves down if we lack it. This is quite important, because we come to the Dharma with different karma and with different kinds of intelligence, and that's going to affect how much we learn and understand and are able to integrate. And this is very different than what a lot of the learning skills that you need in regular education that we all went through. We need to be patient with ourselves and let go of unrealistic expectations of quick attainments. Oh, come on. I'm taking this class for 2 units. It's a 10-week class. I want to take the exam and be done with it. Is that the attitude you have when you study the Dharma? No. It's like, I learn it, and I'm going to keep learning it for the rest of my whole life. Okay? Okay, so we can't be impatient and have all sorts of expectations. I'm just going to run through, the 5 major texts and master them all and get my Geshe degree, and that's good to go. Yeah. No, it's not like that. Okay, we should also avoid comparing ourselves to others. and feeling proud that we are more advanced than our friends, or lamenting that we lag behind them. Each person has different predispositions from previous lives, so no two people will progress at the same speed or in the same way. Comparison of this sort only breeds jealousy, arrogance, and competition, qualities that waste time and are not conducive for transforming our mind. Okay, so there's different teachings that appeal to different people, that different people will understand, and other people have a hard time understanding. So comparing ourselves to other people, totally useless. Yeah. And you can see too, that even in the Tibetans, that, people who can memorize a lot, they're really, you're top notch if you can memorize a lot. If you're a good debater, people respect you so much. But memorizing a lot and being a good debater, does that mean at the time of death you're going to be peaceful? Does that mean when you have problems in your life, you know how to practice the Dharma and transform your mind? No. No pervasion. Yeah. And so the real test of the efficacy of our practice is not something that you can see in terms of, somebody being eloquent and being able to say things or debate or this kind of stuff. The real test is, what goes on in our life and how do we handle things. Similarly, due to karmic connections in previous lives, our friends may be drawn to a particular teacher who does not particularly inspire us, and vice versa. Have you had that happen? A friend comes and says, wow, I went to this teacher, they're so fantastic, da, 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 da. You've got to come listen to them. You go and you're like, yeah. But a teacher you think is fantastic, you bring your friend along and your friend goes, yeah. I mean, one of my teachers, my first two teachers, neither of them could speak English well, okay? One of them coughed most of the way through the talk. And I've heard so many people come to his Dharma talks and leave halfway through saying, I can't understand anything. He mumbles and he coughs. Yeah. And I'm sitting there listening going, oh my God, this is fantastic. And somebody else is like, I can't understand a word that this guy's saying. It's so interesting. So you can really see, how karma works here. Who are we connected with? And you also see too, like at Dharma centers or temples, there will be a resident teacher. When that teacher leaves and another teacher comes, most of the students change too. Yeah. So you would think that the students would all be coming for the Dharma, but often it's like, well, they have connection with one teacher, but not with another. The teacher changes and the students, don't come back, and a whole new group comes. It's quite interesting how this happens. And it's constant, I've seen this happen in so many different places, and in all the Buddhist traditions this happens. Okay, rather than be influenced by peer pressure, we must choose our teachers depending on the quality of guidance we receive from them and the depth of connection we feel with them. Okay, but the depth of connection is not what you feel the first one or two times you meet them. Yeah? Because you hear these stories of, the great masters, and, their teacher came, and their hair stood, their hair on their pores stood on end, and they got the shivers, and they knew that this was their teacher. And so, I've met Westerners who will say, such and such a teacher came in the room, and I got the shivers, and I just knew he was great. And the person says that for like the first 2 Dharma teachings, and then after that they stop coming. Yeah. You also find a number of people who will go to His Holiness's teachings, and here people are totally new to Buddhism. They don't know anything. And they say, the Dalai Lama walks in the room, and I feel like crying. Yeah. That, I think, is something more genuine, because they didn't come expecting to feel shivers and tears and things like that. That's just what happened, They felt His compassion. Whereas, if we think, I'm going to be like Talopa and Naropa, and, walk in, and it's just magic. I can feel the electricity. And, and then people, they do that, and then they go out of that. They go to the local chai shop, in India. I just went to this teacher, and I felt this excitement, and I know that they're my guru, and they tell everybody in this chai shop. And like I said, they'll go back for 2 or 3 more teachings, and then they leave. I'm not saying everybody does this, but some people do. Because we should avoid comparing the practices our teachers instruct us to do with those our friends are prescribed. Because no 2 sentient beings are identical, the Buddha taught a wide variety of practices so people could find those suitable for them. Yeah? And this is really it. People are attracted to different practices, different styles of teaching, different teachers, and it's good that there's this whole variety, instead of just saying, there's just one way, one form of teaching, one teacher, this kind of stuff. It's very good there's a variety, because everybody's quite different. That does not make one practice better and another worse. It simply means that one practice is more suitable for one person and a different practice for another person. At a buffet dinner, one person may like rice and another noodles. Debating which is best, trying to convert our friends to our preference, or feeling out of place because we aren't attracted to the one our friends like, all of this is kind of useless. The point is for each person to eat food that nourishes his or her body. And it's going to be different food for different people. We should study with the teachers who inspire us and practice in the way that works best for us. So not comparing ourselves with our friends, with the stories we hear in the great hagiographies, but just seeing, what works for us. People often ask me why I chose the Galu tradition to practice in. I never chose the Galu tradition. Okay? People ask me, why did you choose those teachers? I never chose those teachers either. When I went to my first Buddhist course, I didn't even know the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism. I had never heard of Gelu, Sakya, Nyingma, Kagyu. Didn't hear about those for many years, actually. All I knew was that what these people said made sense to me, and when I put it into practice, it helped. That's all I knew. I didn't know any of these categories. I didn't know anything else except this. When I thought about it, it made sense. When I practiced it, it helped. Yeah? So I think, rather than, the meditation practice, it helped me when I did it. Some people have to go to many, many teachers, try many, many things before they find something that suits them. Some people want to try, in the U.S. we have the 31 flavors of ice cream, So everybody wants to try all 31 flavors before they buy a cone. Yeah. Usually they don't wind up buying a cone, because you've tasted everything and then you're sick after it. So in the same way, I don't think it's necessary to go around and try every teacher and every style of meditation and everything, and then, picking one at the end. I think it's just, you go, where do you feel at home? Where do you feel like you can relate to the teacher and the practice and the group? Yeah, what helps you? And sometimes it's the first thing you meet, and sometimes it's the 10th thing you meet. Yeah, but, rather than feeling like we have to search, it's like, if you're going to get married, are you going to date everybody before you pick the one to marry? No, you date until there's somebody you click with. And then you get to know them for a while. You don't get married right away. So it's like that too with choosing a teacher and a tradition and a practice. Yeah? You see what works for you on an individual level. And what works for you and what works for your friend may be different, and that's totally okay. Strong, continuous, and stable spiritual experiences are more reliable than powerful, fleeting ones. Some beginners have a strong emotional feeling that they must renounce everything and meditate in solitude for the rest of their lives. That was me and my cohort. This first group of people who showed up at Copan, It was like we were taken with the teachings, and we're going to renounce this world, except, for a little dope here and there and some chocolate cake on Freak Street. And we want our scoop of peanut butter with our chapati at dinner, and we kind of would like there to be more hot water, and, but we were renouncing everything, and we're going to go find a cave and meditate and get enlightened, and that's it. Yeah, that's what we were all going to do. And that's not how it worked out. Yeah, basically, because none of us were ready to go sit in a cave for the rest of our lives and meditate. Even if they had a great furnished cave, yeah, with a soft bed and our hot water and a flushing toilet, we didn't know what to do with our minds. We didn't understand the path. We were just thinking, I want to be like Milarepa. Okay. Instead of immediately searching for an isolated retreat hut, they should keep practicing and see if after a year the feeling still has the same intensity. If it does, they should consult their teacher for guidance. Okay. For most people, meditating in isolated retreat for years is not an option or even a preference. The vast majority of us need to balance Dharma study and sitting meditation with our daily life activities. Formal daily sitting practice enables us to deepen and integrate our understanding of the Dharma in a concentrated way. But the actual determining factor of the effectiveness of our practice manifests in our behavior. Yeah? So our daily life behavior is proof of the pudding. There's a story of someone who meditated in an isolated cave for years and thought his practice was progressing well. But when he went down to town to get supplies, somebody criticized him. His anger immediately flared, and he began shouting at the other person. Okay? What happened to all his great realizations from meditating alone in the cave? Similar incidents in our life show us which disturbing emotions we need to put more energy into taming in our sitting practice. So some of you have heard my glorious story of after I went to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was teaching the 5 things in the thought in the mind training practice. The 5 powers or 5 forces. How to practice them in life, how to practice them at time of death. Beautiful mind training teaching. I love the teaching, So I taught that for a whole weekend in Knoxville. The theme of it is bodhicitta and really subduing the self-centered thought and dedicating your life to benefit others. And then I got on a flight to fly back to Seattle. And I went to the seat, because I'm always very careful to reserve an aisle seat, because I don't like stepping over people and having people step over me. Well, I don't like stepping over them more. Anyway, so I got to my seat, and somebody was sitting in it. And I said, I think this is my seat. And she said, oh, I was hoping that I could change with you, because I wanted to sit on the aisle. And I said, this is my seat. This after I got done teaching a whole weekend of bodhicitta. Yeah. And then I realized what I had said. And I said, oh, how about we just, I'll sit in it for half the flight. You sit in it for half the flight. But by that time she said, no, I'll switch with you. And she had moved to the middle seat. And I felt so ashamed. That's the good kind of shame, but like, oh my God, I just got done teaching this beautiful thing. And then look how I act, this is my seat. And it was so interesting, because you sit there, when you travel a lot, your airplane seat is you plan it beforehand and you know which it is. And this is my seat, my aisle seat, yeah. And, there's a definite feeling of mine in there, okay? And then it's so interesting. The plane lands, you stand up, and then you don't care who in the world sits in that seat, yeah? But for a certain period of time, I am the only legitimate person in the universe who can sit in that seat. And then, like that, I don't care who sits in it, the whole world can sit in it. Yeah? So why, for that 4.5 hours or 14.5 hours, was I so, this whole thing of mine, why was that so big and then so easily dispelled? Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. It's like, have you ever had a possession that you have a strong feeling, this is mine, or it's been in my family, or this is something I really love? Yeah. And then, something happens, I don't know, and you forget about it, and then you don't care who has it. It comes, it goes, you don't care. Strange, isn't it? I like, when I'm working on a file with a book, it's like, this file is like, I make how many copies of it? Because I'm terrified that the computer is just going to, forget it and get lost and doesn't save the recent copy and everything. And then after it's published, it's like, delete, 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 delete. I don't need all these files, But at one point it's like, because I start out with each chapter is in a different file, and so I have to protect each file, and and then at the end, delete, it's all okay. It's been printed. Except I do keep one copy. Okay. People often ask how to balance formal Dharma practice with actively engaging in projects that benefit others. If you are a householder, 50-50 is a good balance. But remember that how this balance manifests in your life will change according to circumstances, so be flexible. The classic His Holiness. 50-50 is good, but, it may have to be 10-90 at some point, Just, you gotta, don't take everything so literally. Okay. Stabilize your compassion through formal practice and express it through active service to others. Work at transforming your motivation, thus making your daily activities part of the Dharma path. If you feel stressed by your service work for others, or become angry or disappointed in the people whom you are trying to help, step back, rest, and take more time for your personal practice. During your meditation practice, focus on developing a compassionate motivation, fortitude, and joyous effort. Learn to accept the limits of the change that you can enact in a world under the influence of afflictions and polluted karma. So he's saying, yes, do some active work to offer service, to benefit others, but don't burn yourself out by doing it, and don't have such high expectations that, all your work is going to result in this wonderful change, because the world is basically, under the influence of ignorance and karma, and that's not going to happen. So, accept the limits of what you can do, be happy and satisfied with that. Yeah, take the time you need for your own practice so you don't get out of balance. And then that way you can continue for a long period of time. Sometimes we go too far in the other direction. Okay, instead of working frantically and getting ourselves exhausted, we go to the other extreme, becoming complacent in our Dharma studies or in a stagnant meditation practice. In these cases, contemplate impermanence and death, as well as the suffering of sentient beings, to reinvigorate your compassion. Okay, then there's a reflection. So 1, a balanced life entails sharing our time among many activities, Dharma practice, socially engaged projects that benefit others, work, caring for friends and family, exercise, and other activities. Also like going to teachings and so on. 2, what is a practical way to prioritize these activities in your life? And 3, given your talents and limitations, think of a realistic way to apportion your time and energy that will bring you satisfaction, not stress. Okay? So I find often what people get confused about is they want to do everything. Yeah, and it's so hard setting priorities because we want to do everything at once, and we can't. Yeah? And to really sit and think, okay, what's my situation right now? And in this situation, what is more important? What is second important? What is third important? And so to set our priorities, not just in terms of what we're going to do, yeah, but in terms of what we want to cultivate in our Dharma practice. Because we all say, well, I want to cultivate concentration, and I also want to study Madhyamika Avatara, and I also want to go and, work for youth emergency services, and I also want to, then I have my job here, and then I do this, and I want to do all these different things, and and I'm frustrated because I can't do any of them. And we got to like sit and, okay, what's my situation? Which is more important? And what kind of person do I want to become? Yeah. Because what is important in our life? What is our priority in life? Is it making a lot of money? Is it climbing up the corporate ladder? Is it getting a lot of praise and approval? What's our priority? And so to really think about, that, what's important in our life. And then when that's clear in our mind, it's much easier to decide what activities to do that will help us to reinforce whatever value or skill or whatever it is that's important in our life. The next section is called Wisdom and Faith. Wisdom and faith complement and reinforce each other on the path. Whereas faith enables us to be inspired and receptive, wisdom gives us a clear mind that understands both conventional existence and ultimate reality. Wisdom is an analytical mind that deeply understands its object, such as impermanence or selflessness. Analysis is not intellectual gymnastics used to impress others. It involves deep investigation into the nature of objects and leads to understanding and knowledge. Okay? And so, lots of times, because His Holiness talks a lot about analysis and the importance of analysis. And we think of analysis in general as an intellectual exercise. You analyze something to get the details, to get the information, and that's it. Okay. But His Holiness is saying, no, it's not intellectual gymnastics. And you're not doing it just, because you want to find the square root of 2. You're analyzing something to really, understand what's the ultimate nature of existence. And how do things function in the conventional world? Because both of these things are quite important to how you live as a human being. The English word faith does not have the same connotation as the Sanskrit word it translates, Shraddha. To understand what faith is, we must look beyond our previous associations with the word to its meaning. Faith is confidence and trust in the three jewels. It is not blind belief. Okay? So we use the word faith often as a translation for the Sanskrit Shraddha, but faith is not a good translation of the word. Yeah, it gives us the whole wrong idea that it just means like blind faith, or I believe and so I stop thinking, or something like that. And that's not the meaning in Buddhism. It's a combination of like you have confidence in a teaching or a teacher, and you trust them. Yeah. And there's different kinds of faith. We'll talk about that. Yeah. But it's not just blind, yeah, I believe. It's something, there's some connection there of confidence and trust and understanding. Okay? A virtuous and joyous mental factor, faith enriches our spiritual practice and arises when we admire the three jewels, aspire to be like them, or deeply understand the teachings. So 3 conditions there. According to the Mind and Awareness text, we speak of 3 types of faith or trust: admiring faith, aspiring faith, and believing faith. Last one, sometimes we call it convictional faith. Okay, so the first one, admiring faith, arises when we learn about the excellent qualities of the three jewels, or witness the good qualities of our spiritual mentors and admire them. Okay, so it's admiring. We have to know something about the object to admire it. It's not, it shouldn't just be, oh, well, the Buddha's a supreme being, so I admire him and have faith. It's like, well, what are the qualities of the Buddha? Why do you admire him? Okay? We have to know something. So admiring faith may also arise from reading the biographies of previous practitioners, contemplating their diligence and determination, and reflecting on the difficulties they overcame to practice the Dharma. So that can really make us admire them, can't it? Yeah. Especially when you really see, different practitioners trying very hard and what they faced and how they overcame it. That really we can develop a lot of admiration for them. Not all spiritual biographies are written like that. Sometimes they're more hagiographies, where it's just you have a lot of really wonderful, magnificent, unbelievable, and incredible, inconceivable words like that. Yeah. But you don't get a sense of them as a person. You know how sometimes you read a biography or an autobiography and you really feel like, oh, like you know the person. Yeah? You've gotten a sense of how they think or what are you pointing to? Geshe Zopa. So in his biography, you really had a sense of how he was as a person. Whereas other biographies, you don't really have that sense. It's this, they studied that, they taught this. Yeah, but you don't have that sense. Okay. This faith so we're talking about admiring faith. This faith clears away mental distress and makes the mind joyful. In extreme cases, admiring faith could degenerate into blind faith, which has little value and may be dangerous. But authentic admiring faith is a vital aid on the path that serves to orient our efforts in a positive direction. Yeah, when we admire the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then it orients our direction in life, doesn't it? And we want to be like that. We want to practice like they've practiced to attain those qualities. Yeah. If we just have blind faith, like, oh, that person's a Buddha. Yeah, you hear people say that. Oh, my teacher's a Buddha. You don't ask why. Whether why means no or not. Yeah, you don't ask why. They, oh, they're wonderful. I was at one of His Holiness's teachings once, and there were some Westerners who were the students of one Western teacher, and they kept going, oh, our teacher's a bodhisattva. He must be at least, path of seeing bodhisattva. And, maybe he's a Buddha, and he's just magnificent. And he can tell you this, and he can tell you that. And it wasn't at all inspiring to me. Yeah, not at all. And I thought, gee, I wonder if that teacher knows that his disciples are talking about him that way in public. I would be very embarrassed if people were going around saying, oh, she's so wonderful, and she's this, and she must be a bodhisattva. And it's based on no evidence at all, or maybe, just because you think I have a good sense of humor or something. Oh, she must be a bodhisattva, she's a great teacher. It's like, be quiet, okay? So I was really wondering, I wonder what that teacher, I wonder what's going on there. Anyway, it was a teacher who wound up getting in a lot of trouble. Aspiring faith, so the first one was admiring. The second one, aspiring faith, arises when we develop the wish to attain the excellent qualities of the three jewels. It arises from reflecting on the possibility of removing defilements and attaining liberation, and it gives purpose and energy to our practice. When we know the benefits of serenity and concentration, we have faith in them and aspire to attain them. So again, aspiring faith, we have to know something about what we are aspiring for. Otherwise, it's just blind faith. Yeah. So he gave the example when we know the benefits of serenity and concentration. Yeah, we have faith in them. We aspire to attain them. We do the practice. We exert effort in that direction. Okay. And then the third one, believing faith, is of two kinds. So the first believes the truth of the Buddha's teachings because they were taught by the Buddha and our spiritual mentors, and we trust them. Okay? So this is based on, we have faith in the Buddha, we have faith in our spiritual teachers. They told us that these qualities are good. They told us that this text was wonderful. And because we trust those people, then we believe in the text, we believe in the teacher, whatever. Okay? So that's one kind of believing faith. Okay? So this faith may arise due to reasons that we have only partially verified or without applying reasoning at all. So that kind of believing faith is not going to be very stable. Yeah, we believe because somebody else recommended it. Like somebody says, go to this naturopath, they're good. Yeah? Well, my friend said go to that. Yeah, I'll go. That I have a reference. So that's good, you have a reference. It gives you some faith. But the real thing is going to be when you go to that doctor and you see for yourself how they treat you and if you recover from it. Okay, then the second type of believing faith is based on conviction and arises after having examined and understood a teaching. Because it often involves reasoning used to verify the topic, this faith is stable. Okay, so here is where our whole Thursday evening studies comes in. Learning how to do reasoning, learning how to examine a topic. And if we can examine it and see that it's really true, then our faith, our believing faith, is very stable because it has reason supporting it. If we believe a certain thing in Buddhism, but simply because our teachers have said so, we don't really understand it, that's not going to be so stable for us. Okay? When Geshe Sona Rinchen was teaching us Chandakirti's supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way, there's a whole section, you're refuting the Samkhyas, refuting the Mimamsakas, refuting all these different non-Buddhists. And of course, they're just giving us the bare outlines of those systems of belief. And you hear them and you go, who in the world would believe that? And so it seems like, well, why are we wasting our time refuting that? And I remember somebody said that one time to Geshe-la, and he said, these other people, they're not stupid. And if they came here and taught their belief system to you, you would probably believe it. Yeah, because you haven't really understood through reasoning what the Buddha has said. You're just saying, everything is empty of inherent existence. But if somebody presents you with another reason, why there's a permanent cosmic substance. Geshe-la said, you believe the guy. Yeah? So it kind of squashed our pride a little bit. Yeah, we thought we were so kind of, brilliant because we could say all phenomena are empty of inherent existence because they're dependent arising. Aren't we smart? Like, no. Okay. Having contemplated the Four Truths for a long time, we become convinced that they accurately describe our predicament and how to remedy it. After studying and using reasoning to investigate the ultimate nature of phenomena, we experience a calm conviction that all persons and phenomena are empty of inherent existence. We are confident that by realizing this directly, we will be able to uproot the self-grasping ignorance that is the source of all dukkha. Now that's something, we hear that all the time, don't we? The self-grasping ignorance is the source of all of our dukkha. And we say it, and we've heard it. And how much do we really understand it? When you really sit down, do you understand how your ignorance is the source of your continual rebirth? Do you really understand how that works? Do we really understand how the ignorance of the ultimate nature is the basis for generating afflictions? Do we really understand the disadvantages of the afflictions? Okay, so our understanding, you can see, it's not an on and off light switch. As we hear the teachings, we learn the words, we start to think about the meaning of the words, but there's a lot more to really explore and understand, and understand deeply, so that if somebody presents another reasoning or another viewpoint, we don't drop what we've just said and say, oh, that sounds right, and follow the other thing. Like I told you, my friend who was a Buddhist for many years, and I went away for 1 month and I came back and she was Catholic. Yeah. So we don't be like that. So it takes a lot of really, going into something very deeply and trying to understand. And some of these things, we can't understand them right away. Yeah. It really depends on purification and merit. And sometimes we decide what we believe based on our emotions. Like somebody once said to me, well, actually more than one person has said to me, when a dear one dies, Buddhism is not very comforting. Yeah. Believing in God is much more comforting when a dear one dies. Because you just say, they went to heaven. Yeah, they're happy in heaven. I'll get to see them again later when I die and go to heaven. They're in God's care. It was all God's will. I just accept God's will because God knows best. And for some people, that view is so comforting. And Buddhism is not comforting at all. Because Buddhism, they say, well, why did my loved one die? Well, you have to understand karma, and somebody experiences the cause, the result of what they created themselves. You mean that my dear one who was so wonderful did some negative action? Impossible. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, if we're that kind of person and we start off believing in Buddhism, if a dear one dies and a Christian comes along, we're going to convert. It's so kind of, yes, it's God's will. My dear one was God. That's wonderful. Yeah. I don't want to think of karma, that my dear one created a negative action. And because also they don't understand what the Buddha is saying, and they'll say, oh, Buddhism says they deserve to suffer. Of course, that's not what the Buddhism is saying, but that's what people think. Okay? You getting what I'm saying?
I had kind of asked this indirectly, but maybe you remember there was a friend of ours who had that situation. So I'm curious as to, because I never really followed this up, how would someone who is so knowledgeable, they interpreted something that is in the Pali Canon to support their view that kind of seemed to get rid of part of the teachings of either rebirth or karma. Do you remember this?
I think what the person you're talking about, they didn't read from the Pali Canon or anything like that. It's just they were believing what emotionally made them feel better. And it was emotionally feel better to say, all this talk about karma, it doesn't really exist like that and work over lifetimes. It was, they were trying to find some way to deal with their grief because their grief was so painful. So remember, like I always say, first people figure out what they want to believe and then they find out things to support it. So like that. Yeah.
Find this email again because at the time I was busy. But they sent some quote that even you had Bhikkhu Bodhi comment on. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. But see, you can always find a quote and interpret it the way you want to. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think for me that if I expect myself to understand things very quickly, and then I don't, and then big painful things happen, that's when it's very easy, I think, to go towards something that's going to bring some immediate or even habitual relief.
Yeah.
And so this idea to have such a big mind and to think about many, many lives is really helpful. That really, at least for me, it really calms my mind down when I get into that place.
Yeah. So for you, thinking about many lifetimes, and I have a long time to understand it, and I'm planting seeds, that makes a lot of sense for you. For somebody else, many lifetimes, I don't even know, if those things exist, and that just it's too big for me. Yeah. I want some certainty now. It's so interesting to see how people's minds may have the exact same situation, but see it totally differently.
I was wondering if you could, as a layperson, for example, my grandfather, when I first met Ryder and they were visiting, and it came up that Ryder was a Buddhist, and then my grandfather got really upset and said, he's an atheist, I should say, but he comes from a Jewish family. And, he said his problem with Buddhism was that if you believe the system, the belief system of Buddhism, then you are saying that Jewish people, deserved to die in the Holocaust and that kind of thing. And in those sorts of situations, what a good response might be. For me, I don't know that I have a response that I feel like I can accurately, if you have advice to people like me and how to address people's misunderstanding without, defensiveness or being offensive to others.
First of all, I wouldn't say to somebody who is not a Buddhist, who has experienced great tragedy, I wouldn't talk to them about karma. Because when they're unless they have some previous familiarity with thinking about karma, it's just they misunderstand it. And I've done that myself and learned the hard way. For somebody, it sounds like with your grandfather, they already had heard something like that and had the misunderstanding and came to you to clarify it. And so how do you clarify that? What I would say in that case is I don't know if they would understand it, but I would probably try and say, the people who created the cause for suffering were not necessarily Jews in the life when they created the cause. They could have been in some, members of some other group that, let's say, had oppressed some people, and then they were reborn as Jews and experienced the Holocaust. And then I would add on to that, then some of the people who ran the concentration camps and killed people during the Second World War. It's possible that those people in a future life will be reborn as members of a group that's oppressed, because that's just the way that karma works. It's not a reward. It's not a punishment. Nobody deserves to suffer. In fact, we all want to cultivate compassion and do our best to stop suffering. And that's, I think probably emphasizing the compassion to stop suffering is more important than even trying to help them understand what karma is. Yeah, because it's so difficult when you have something very painful to understand karma. Yeah, unless you have some prior, you've thought about it in a correct way somehow before. Yeah. It's difficult when people learn a little bit and then have the wrong idea.
Our Singapore friends are asking, can Venerable please elaborate on the second reflection? What is the practical way to prioritize these activities to have a balanced life?
I would say set up your priorities about what's important for you in your life in terms of, what are the values and things that are important, what kind of person do you want to be, and then think about what kind of activities do you want to engage in that will help you become that kind of person. And then think of how you can practically integrate some of them in your life in a comfortable way. And if you're asking for me to tell you specifically how to run your life, I can't do that.
Shall I read the follow-up question?
You can read it and we'll see what I answer.
As we progress, do we need to put more time into practice compared to listening to the teaching? What will be the balance percentage between the two?
You have to figure that out for yourself. Yeah, everybody's different. You have to figure that out. Yeah. Because anyway, what am I going to tell you? Yeah, you meditate, 37 minutes and 52 seconds every morning, and, I can't lay things out like that for you. You have to see what works with you for your own schedule. Mm-hmm.
The section that you taught tonight on general advice is just perfect for safe online participants.
Mm-hmm.
We hear again and again, especially when people get to about 1B or even course 4, there's this huge discouragement that settles in. And why am I not making more progress? But especially in 1A and 1B, that comes because people they haven't been here, or they're not they're quite new to everything.
Uh-huh.
So I think I'll send this to all the facilitators from now on.
Uh-huh.
Send this out to people right away, and then maybe send it again halfway through the course.
Uh-huh.
And then, once a year they get to hear this, because
Yeah.
we need to hear it again and again.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to hear it again and again, even long-time students. Let me just see. Okay, I think I need to finish this paragraph. Let me just finish the paragraph at least, okay? Okay, so in these examples, believing, I'll read a few. After studying and using reasoning to investigate the ultimate nature of phenomena, we experience a calm conviction that all persons and phenomena are empty of inherent existence. We are confident that by realizing this directly, we will be able to uproot the self-grasping ignorance that is the source of all dukkha. In these examples, believing faith is directed towards the Dharma jewel, true paths and true cessations. From this, firm confidence in the Buddha and the Sangha jewels easily follow. Such faith, born of conviction, stabilizes our practice, enabling us to pursue the Dharma in depth. Okay, so we will stop here for reading. Do you have more questions or comments? Yeah.
I was talking with one of our guests who was just here, who's a teacher, a professor, and about how she teaches her classes. And it was just interesting that she was saying that she tries to incorporate into her classes group learning to work in teamwork as part of her class. That people really struggle with that. It's much easier to kind of just do it by yourself and like go home to the assignments by yourself, come to class prepared, do exactly as the experiment is, and not have to like work with others and learn how to communicate well and encourage and support and collaborate. And so they get really frustrated. But that she's tried to construct her classes in a way that goes beyond just learn the material, spit it out, to have these other worldly skills that you need in the world. But there's pushback from the students that they just want the spoon-fedness. So it's interesting at how the students, what expectations the student bring will also determine how much the teacher can do in the class in terms of whether they're going to be willing participants or not, or agree with
Well, some teachers, the students may complain. Some teachers may push back against that and say, look, I'm the teacher teaching it for a certain purpose. I want you to learn not just the information, but also these skills, because you need these skills in your life. Yeah. Just because the students complain doesn't mean the teacher needs to redo everything.
No, I think she was holding the line of like, I've done this for a purpose. So.
For the question about setting priorities, I think sometimes we might want to approach it in this very quantitative way, like 90% spiritual practice, 10% mundane practice. But in my own experience, it's been like, it sounds cliche, but following your heart, learning to recognize what gives you inspiration and ease and joy. And you can't always know exactly ahead of time. You kind of just have to go in a certain direction and do this practice, and that will lead to something else, which will lead to something else. And like when making a decision, some people sit down, they make a list of all the pros and the cons, and whichever list is longer, that's the one that they choose. But that's actually not a very good way to make a decision, because it doesn't weigh the importance of each point. So I found that it requires a different kind of thinking. It's not this linear, quantitative, let's know in advance, let's plan everything out type of thinking. That definitely has to come in at some point, or else you're just directionless. But it's really been getting down to a deeper level and listening to what resonates with your heart.
Yeah, very much what in the Dharma, what resonates in your heart. And also to be aware that as you start going in the direction of maybe one or two priorities, or you start doing something, then your orientation changes. And what you thought wasn't important becomes more important, and vice versa. Yeah. So sometimes we like to think, oh, there is one fixed, right decision to make, and I just have to figure out what it is. But it's already a pre-planned right decision. I just don't know it yet. And there's only one. And I don't want to get the wrong one, you know? And that's not how life works. Not at all. Okay. Leave you with some ambiguity. Because life is very ambiguous, isn't it? It's very ambiguous. You have a plan. How many of your plans have actually happened that way? Yeah. We were talking that we have a whole plan for if there's a fire in our evacuation plan. Are things really going to happen that way? Exactly. You know? It's just so that we have some plan. We have some idea of what we need to take care of. It makes us feel secure. But in the actual thing, what happens? You know, you think one leader is going to control the thing and everybody around here is going to listen to one person. It's never happened in the history of this Abbey. Yeah? Is that going to happen in a crisis? Yeah. No, we'll stand there and go, but this and but that and but this.
As an athletic trainer at a Big Ten university, we practice things together. And even when I worked in some other athletic settings, and we worked as a team together and we practiced things. And then we had to handle medical emergencies. And it's just like you practice it, and then everything flows easier. And problems come up, there's no script. But it's a lot more, it's just a lot easier.
Yeah, you practice it, you know some basic skills. But what happens, this is what happens. You know?
Is it necessary to take the three refuges to develop the first step in having faith in Buddhism? So I'm guessing, is it necessary to have taken refuge to have admiring faith?
To have a mind of faith?
Admiring
faith? No. No, I mean, you can study and learn about the qualities of the Buddha and think about the Dharma without having taken refuge.